Hey, guys, now, what did I tell you before? The heroes of legendary movies are usually the directors. The heroes of TV series are screenwriters. But I want to emphasize, usually .so there are exceptions, and this series is one of those exceptions, because even though Sherlock is seen as a TV series, we all know that it was an intermediate work with only 2 to 3 episodes a year and 90-minute episodes that tasted like a movie but didn't feel exactly like a movie. So it was neither a series nor a movie. At least that's the case for me. By the way, before I get to the main topic of the video, I would be very happy if you subscribe to my channel. I put a lot of work into these videos and your subscription encourages me to make more videos. Let's get back to the video. Now you probably think that if the success of the show is not the directors, if it's not the scriptwriters, then only the lead is left. So Benedict Cumberbatch made the show, but that's not the right answer. The right answer is the BBC, the producers, and the broadcaster BBC. You heard me right, the BBC channel has been a great success. We will come back to this part, but first let's start with the screenwriter. Now the friend you see in the picture is the screenwriter of the Sherlock series. This brother modernizes the Sherlock story in a wonderful way. In other words, he adapts it to the present day, which is one of the main reasons why this series is legendary. Because this brother was able to reconstruct the events in such a way that the conditions of the period did not affect the story. So let's say you are watching an intrigue series. The bad guy came, threatened the good guy in the story, and left, but because everyone thinks the bad guy is the good guy, our hero cannot convince anyone that this guy is bad. Imagine we have a story like this. Look, this is something that could have happened in the 17th century, but today, when I see this story in a movie, I just laugh because if the good guy gets an audio recording of his conversation with the bad guy, the whole problem will disappear. However, in today's TV series, a lot of screenwriters take the easy way out and write stories as if there were no technological products like voice recorders or cameras in that universe. And when you take stories like Sherlock Holmes, which are normally written for the 17th, 18th, or 19th century, and put them in the present day, you get strange absurdities. Simply put, the number of evidence that an ordinary homicide bureau chief can reach at the crime scene today has reached incredible levels with the developing branches of science over time, such as autopsy reports. In other words, a Sherlock story that would have been a legend in the 17th century can be solved in 3 minutes today. Because we will be able to learn from the fingerprints that the man killed his wife, I think I succeeded in explaining how difficult it is to adapt a story from the past to the present, and this brother succeeded, and he repeated this success twice. So, as you know, there are very few episodes in the series, but it's a series that goes on for seasons, and this creates a problem, because technology is advancing very fast nowadays. The problem I just described happens again. In the first season, Sherlock uses a phone like this, but as the seasons progress, his phone changes into this shape. However, narratively, time does not flow so fast, naturally. In a series that airs 3 episodes a year, such issues create a lot of problems, but our screenwriter brother has managed to overcome this, and this is where the success of our screenwriter brother ends. The rest is the success of this sister. Normally this sister designs the episodes to be 40 minutes long and 24 episodes per season, but when this sister reads the script, she says that 40-minute episodes can't draw people in, and if we shoot too many episodes, we can't give enough time. So she says we can't do it with enough quality, and she argues that the episode should be 90 minutes. In this way, he says, we can pay as much attention to each episode as if we were shooting a movie, and in order to do this, each season should consist of 3 or at most 4 episodes. Otherwise, he says, we won't be able to give enough attention. It's not hard to say that he is very visionary in this respect. What I am going to tell now is more about the origin story of the series. Now there is a problem like this. The British TV series industry is based on 40-minute series, and if the season is 3 episodes, the advertising revenue earned from the series will not be enough to cover the budget of the series. Therefore, an extra support is needed, since this sister is on good terms with the BBC. She takes the project to the BBC and explains the details. BBC decides to approve the project. Friends, by the way, BBC is the state television of England. Some of the taxes of the British people go to the BBC, and the BBC uses this money to build an effective news network around the world or to finance series like Sherlock that will promote the country. Anyway, in the end the BBC accepted the project with the help of this brother. If it wasn't for this vision of the BBC, we probably wouldn't have seen a quality production combining movie and TV series. Let's talk about Benedict Cumberbatch. Look, I've said it before, there's a saying in America, people go to Hollywood to become movie actors, but some people settle for TV series acting. So the movie industry gets the best actors, the rest go to TV series, and sometimes actors like Benedict Cumberbatch come along and it doesn't take long for them to be discovered, like Benedict Cumberbatch. He was discovered very quickly thanks to the TV series. That's why he was offered roles in movies like Enigma or Doctor Strange. The same goes for Dr. Watson, who was already a movie actor. Let's move on to more fun stuff, namely the famous observation skills of the Sherlock character. As you know, Sherlock's most important characteristic is his intelligence and extreme observation skills. When you write a series script, if you write in the character analysis that this character is very intelligent, it doesn't mean anything to the audience. You have to prove it to the audience. Usually these attempts to prove it are so funny that they are not taken seriously. Let's take an example now. The truth is that the last season of Sherlock was extremely bad, just like How I Met Your Mother or Game of Thrones. But for me, that doesn't affect the legend of a show. I'm used to it now. It's really hard to find a show with a good finale. So it's not a criterion for me. So why was the ending so bad? Let me explain. The reason I just said. They added Sherlock's sister to the show. They said she was even smarter than Sherlock, but when it came to proving it, they couldn't prove it. She was so smart that she could influence the psychologists in prison to commit suicide with one look. He even had their families killed before they committed suicide. Are you kidding? That's not intelligence. That's nothing but witchcraft. No matter how smart a person is, he can't get someone with a degree in psychology to kill his wife, his child, and then himself with one look. It's as simple as that. Anyway, let's go back to the first 3 seasons. In the first 3 seasons of Sherlock, this was not the case. On the contrary, Sherlock's observation skills and intelligence were very well explained to the audience. For example, the deductions he made using the deductive technique and the clues he based these deductions on were so well conveyed in the series that I admired his observations, and at the same time I almost never reacted that this was not enough. So they adjusted the balance so well, and that's one of the things that makes this series legendary. Now Sherlock, as you know, is a genius, and again, as you know, genius brains bring with them 2 extra personality traits, narcissism and sociopathy. Science has proven this time and time again. If a person has an IQ above 130, they tend to care less about other people, society, and traditions. Their emotional intelligence becomes less and less. And this effect is exponential for people with an IQ above 145. So we wouldn't expect Sherlock to be an emotional character, but no matter how intelligent he is a human being, not a machine. So he has a little bit of emotion, and this is handled very successfully in the series. There's only one person Sherlock has a complete emotional attachment to, Dr. Watson. In a way, Dr. Watson plays the role of Sherlock's weakness because he is the only one who allows him to make emotional decisions, and this weakness is important because if the protagonist doesn't have a weakness, the audience cannot empathize with him. On top of that, the story becomes unrealistic. The Sherlock character's relationship with Dr. Watson has worked very well. Even Dr. Watson is handled very well. Sherlock's only weak point is Dr. Watson, and Dr. Watson's weak point is his wife. So, in order to reach Sherlock, you first need to reach Dr. Watson's wife so that he can corner them. Actually, we can take it back a little bit. Sherlock's brother, because Mycroft is Sherlock's equal in intelligence and has almost no weaknesses, except for one thing, and that's Sherlock. Actually, some of the events in the show are not about Sherlock. As you know, it's about cornering Mycroft. They handled Sherlock's weaknesses very well, and they handled the character development very well. If you finish the series and rewind to the first episode, you can see how almost every character trait of Sherlock's character has developed, While Sherlock was closer to a robot in the first episodes, the gradual increase in his emotional intelligence adds an incredibly enjoyable atmosphere to the series. If you are one of those who had to wait 2 years for 3 episodes like me, I suggest you to finish the series again by making a weekend marathon. It really tastes different, but you can skip the last season. Now that we've talked about the character's intelligence, let's talk about other aspects of the story. In fact, it is possible to consider Sherlock as a superhero series because he has superhuman super abilities. In this case, the villain, who is the enemy of the character, should be no better than him. Both sides must be smart, that's for sure. The important thing here is how easy the screenwriter will go. For example, in some TV series, if the two sides are playing some kind of chess, such a story can be written easily. The villain makes a plan. Suddenly we turn to the hero of the series. He says, "I had already planned this." Then the villain does something clever again. Then we go back to the hero and he says, "I had planned this too," and the cycle continues. It was a shortcut. Fortunately, Sherlock doesn't take that shortcut. There's a real chess game between Sherlock and James Moriarty. One makes a move, the other responds. He changes himself and his plans accordingly. In other words, he doesn't just say, "I've already thought of that move," and step aside, which is one of the most important factors in making the series legendary. Now let's talk a little bit about the music. As you know, the series started only 1 year after the Sherlock Holmes movie, and the music of the Sherlock Holmes movie was composed by Hans Zimmer. When the series was announced right afterwards, I thought that they would work with Hans Zimmer again, but that was not the case. Instead, they worked with David Arnold. When I found out this information, I hadn't watched the series yet. I hadn't even seen the trailer, so I was a bit disappointed. I would have liked Hans Zimmer to have composed the music, but to tell you the truth, I like David Arnold's music for the series more than Hans Zimmer's music for the movie. The last thing I think is legendary about the series is the production quality. The BBC spared no expense. They should be congratulated on that. The fact that they can spend so much money on a show that is sure to make a loss really deserves appreciation. By the way, Sherlock is rented to online platforms at very high prices these days. So it made a profit even afterwards. But this was not possible in those years. I would like to mention one more thing. I never thought I would praise this in a TV series, but kudos to the guy who designed the costumes in the series. He really knows his stuff. The costumes smell very British. If you ask why this is important, here's why. In the original Sherlock Holmes book, Sherlock's clothing style is described in great detail. Sherlock in the book is a perfect example of the British style of that period. In the series, while preserving the depictions in the book, they have also managed to modernize these depictions. Without further ado, every episode of Sherlock is legendary for being better than thousands of movies. That's all from me for now. Until we meet in the next video, I am glad you're here.